All right. Good morning to everyone who's joined us from the UK today, and good afternoon to all the speakers who have joined us on this panel. Now that we've hit the mark, let's kick things off from here. So today, the session, which is going to be one of a three series workshop series that we've organized for the Department for International Trade. The topic for today's session would be influence of UKEF projects in the current economic condition. But we will also be covering, as per popular request and demand from the Department for International Trade, a little bit more on the Expo site and the update on the Expo site, and also a little bit on the legacy plans of the Expo site itself. We will also be touching quite quickly on the nuances of doing business in the UAE towards the very end, along with my colleague Rashid, who has joined us from the embassy. So very quickly moving on, just a few housekeeping rules first. So this session is being recorded. We will be sending you the recording of this session latest by tomorrow. You should receive it. And just a quick COVID update, really. And the most important announcement that was made in the last few days was the establishment of the UK UAE travel corridor. What that means is the quarantine times have been substantially reduced, eliminated, I'd say, to a very large extent, if you were to travel between the UK and the UAE. However, there are still 1,000+ cases that are being reported in the UAE, but with very good recovery rates, might I add. There has been no scarcities to report of on the PPE and the key equipment side of things in the UAE. And life has pretty much come back to normalcy, except for the fact that we all still have to wear masks, which is mandatory when we step out of our offices and our homes. Now, very quickly, if I can run you through the running order of today's event. I'm Vinita, and I'm part of the British Centers for Business. And we will then follow it through by a session by David, who will be talking to us about the Expo Progress update and any related opportunities. We're then joined by Michelle, who will be taking us through some of the big ticket UKEF projects, not only in the UAE, but also across the region. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, Rashid and I will touch on some of the cultural nuances to bear in mind if you're looking at UAE as a potential export market. I will then be taking some questions while the session is on. Again, depending on the number of questions, we will try and deal with them as and when they come in. But if there isn't enough time, we will answer some of these questions towards the end. Else, we will be collating these questions and answering it along with the follow-up emails that you shall be receiving with the recordings in it. So that's the headshot of the speakers today. Myself, David, Michelle, and Rashid. And with that, I want to firstly introduce you and give you a brief overview of who the BCB is. With the British Centers for Business, officially partnered with the Department for International Trade, have been since 2016. And just sharing with you some stats and figures in the sense, some of the trade missions that we've led in the past, over 40, and not just on the trade mission side of things, but we also have helped very many companies in the past on the investment side of things to a large extent. And when I say investment, I'm talking about inward investment into the UAE. In that, through our incubator platform, we've helped over 45 companies set up here and establish their businesses in this part of the world. That's a quick snapshot of some of the partnerships that we have in the region. So not just the Department of International Trade, but also the DeVolts. We work quite closely with the Scots, Northern Ireland, Santander, the Welsh government, and the UAE UK Business Council, all of which form a nice network for companies like yourselves to tap into when you're looking into the UAE. Just a quick overview again of the numbers, so to speak. We've seen an increased number of inquiries come in over the last few months, since this year began. And I think that's quite a positive sign, given the fact that companies are now looking further afield in terms of wanting to do business. The couple of logos that you see in there are some of the companies that we have in the past, we have helped in the past and have done quite well for themselves in the region, having undertaken market research programs and B2B introductions that we have been able to provide to them. Next slide, please. And I think we have the flexibility and the agility to provide services that range from event management all the way through to B2B introductions and even to site selection to a large extent, if that's what you need from us. Like I was mentioning earlier, you can also avail of an incubator platform that we're able to provide. We are accredited by Dubai SME for this, where companies who are looking at a quick and a cost-effective way to set up here can essentially become part of the gang by using some of the services that we offer. And that's the team. As you can see, quite a diverse team and quite a reasonably large team. Between the 13 of us, we speak over 7 regional languages and a combined experience of over 85 years. And also might I add that we're part of OCO Global, headquartered in Belfast, and that's our footprint right there. As you can see, we have multiple offices across the globe. So we're not just able to support you in the UAE, but also, across several different continents. So that was a very quick rush through introduction to who the BCB is and how we do what we do. I'm going to hand it over now to David, who is the Director of Architecture for Real Estate and Delivery of Expo 2020, and also the legacy plan of Expo 2020, which is called District 2020. David, over to you now.
Good morning. It's good afternoon in Dubai, but we'll say good morning. Yes, my name is David Gourley. Trained as an architect at Edinburgh many years ago. Spent the last 20 years in UAE and the last 3.5 years working on the Expo project. Let's see. District 2020 is a legacy condition, and that has been actually my focus. But I know that you were asking for an update on the project, so we'll have some drone footage of the site as it is. The event was previously planned for October 2020 through to April 21. Unfortunately, because of COVID, that's been delayed. So it's now the 1st of October 2021 through to the end of March 2022, which is the 6 months, clear 6 months. When we see the drone footage, you'll realize that the project is essentially complete, ready to go. It was ready as of, thanks for that, it's ready as of October this year. So, for instance, the infrastructure for the project was in over a year ago. So the last year has been the building of the buildings, completion of the buildings. You can see this is Al Wasl Dome, which is at the heart of the project. Some of the Al Wasl buildings designed for legacy. There's 3 themes. It's thematic districts: opportunity, sustainability, mobility. And I think we're flying over, there we go. And again, this is the shade structures in the middle of the thematic district. It was designed by Hopkins out of London. The Al Wasl Dome was Adrian Smith Gordon Gill out of America. So as you can see, it's quite dramatic. This is the state of completion of the project. So you can see it's pretty much ready to go. There are elements in the project which are still under construction, which are the self-built country pavilions, and they are still under construction. So they're all now timed to be complete by the end of October. So some Some areas have been delayed. The gull-wing gold roof there you see is the new metro. The DEC is the Dubai Exhibition Centre, which will be moving out. For Expo, we have about 40,000 square meters, growing to 180,000 square meters in the future. There's another shot of the metro station. It's a dedicated metro station for Expo. And yeah. This is the other side of Expo. There's a shopping center, and there's also some accommodation in Expo Village. This is now back to some of the thematic districts. As you can see, the landscaping is filling out nicely. It's a very unique kind of environment for Dubai. A lot of shading, a lot of water to cool the environment. Again, shade structures over the pedestrian ways, which are now complete. And there we go back to our Russell Dome. It just pans back a little bit. So it's about 4 square kilometers. It's quite a large site. Let's flip to the next slide. So this is District 2020. You'll see elements there which you might recognize in the middle of the picture, the dome and a few of the thematic districts. But this is an image of what District 2020 will be in the future. Next slide, please. So we'll have a little promotional video which will show the overall the future of Expo 2020. The driver for the development is very much a center for innovation, new industries, building something different for Dubai. Connect, create, innovate. Create was the connecting the world, creating the future was the Expo byline. Connect, create, innovate is the District 2020 byline. So let's quickly look at next slide, please. Which this is District 2020, which is in white, and the colored elements are the elements from Expo that are retained and repurposed. You can see the dome in the middle. There's a series of buildings surrounding, 2 hotels, 3 office buildings. Then the thematic districts were originally pavilions, and they are converted into residential and commercial office space. The mobility pavilion would be an HQ. The sustainability pavilion becomes a children's science museum. The large red block at the back is the Dubai Exhibition Centre, obviously growing to its full extent, as you can see in the diagram. And then there's the metro station. So this is what's envisaged. Next slide, please. These, again, a couple of elements that were retained, apart from some of the key buildings. There are lots of the parks, the green spaces, as well as the existing infrastructure. Next slide, please. All the main roads in and out of the site are constructed and have been for about 6 months. All the main electrical power stations, etc., are in place now. Oh, first Park, another one. Okay, so District 2020 Master Plan, Designing for Innovation Center. But the starting point has always been human being. It's a human scale, so human comfort. The shading, Dubai has a very harsh sunny climate, particularly during the summer, so we're very cognizant of that, and we want to extend the period of time that we can be out in the open. So human-centric design is a key element of going forward. Design for people. It is a smart city. We're very fortunate in that the platform that is there for Expo, it remains. And we have a 5G system which we can base all our smart innovations, smart mobility, all the innovations for security and also kind of functions of municipal functions that are also part of this. So connect, create, innovate. It's placemaking, human scale, public realm with shading. It's all about walkability. We have a whole series of a pedestrian network, which is out with the vehicular network. There's also a bicycle network similarly. And we look at how we are creating street spaces as opposed to buildings in spaces. So we're creating streets with edges that give that ability for people to walk along, which is quite innovative for Dubai. Next slide, please. So the parks, the quality of air, wellness, walkable bike lanes, etc., comfort, it's all to do with passive shading, etc. So we can get people out and about for a longer period in the year. And I think with COVID, this is just reinforced that we need to do this, and these outside spaces are key. Next slide, please. So here we have a diagram which shows all the public spaces that we inherit and how we create some new public spaces, and then we have this network of walkable spaces. Next, please. So again, the Sika is a unique element in this part of the world. It's a pedestrian route, which was traditionally between the narrow lanes between buildings, which were shaded, usually designed to catch the wind. So we are taking that idea and having a network of purely pedestrian routes through the buildings. And unfortunately, in Dubai, Sikas tend to be the back end of the building, so we're wanting to make sure that, if you have the next slide, please, we can see that what we're going to do is we're going to activate these edges, so it will be not only comfortable, safe, it'll be an interesting walk as we walk through the whole development. Next slide. Sustainability, obviously, it's a core of both Expo and District 2020. Next slide, please. And we have, as well as all the buildings during Expo being LEED Gold, we will carry on that to the fit out to LEED Silver standard in District 2020. And then we're also going for the WELL Community standard, where it talks about not only air and water, light, that part of the LEED. We also look at things like mind and the facilities that are part of District 22 and 20. Next slide, please. So some of the innovations, future-centric. We have human-centric and then future-centric that talks about the future and how we can future-proof the city. Next slide. And again, we go back to, next slide, please. Yeah, connect, create, innovate. So we've looked at things like dedicated AV route. At the moment, the local authorities are not keen to have the autonomous vehicles on the vehicular routes. So to introduce these AV routing into the master plan, we have a dedicated route planned in the system. What that will be, it's a couple of years out, so we're not exactly sure if it's a bus or a pod or whatever, but we know that's something we want to have in our master plan, and we're planning for it. Public transport, again, we've got, there's the AV route in there, but I think from a priority, it's pedestrian, bicycles, public transport, then vehicular transport is our priorities going forward. So that's the AV route in there. Next slide. Smart mobility, obviously, it's a big field, but smart mobility, I think, is very much part of what we're looking at. how can we make drop the number of private vehicles, make sure that the traffic systems are working most efficiently, try and get as much as try and get people out of private cars as much as possible. So we'll have the pooled private transport, the Ubers, the pooled car systems, public transport, a big part of it, as well as bicycles, e-scooters, walking. So, okay, next slide, please. And this is an example of what that AV route could be like, where there's open spaces, autonomous vehicle buzzing around, picking people up, linking all the main elements of the master plan. Next one, please. And these are just some diagrams which show what I was talking about. It's the pedestrian, the bicycle, and the public transport. I mean, there's three kind of networks which are overlaid and which are separate from vehicular transport. So next slide, please. And this is some of the main spaces. Now, if you're familiar with Dubai, this would be an unusual kind of environment where you have, you're really creating a more European street with the buildings close to the edge. So you end up with that self-shading, and it's a more attractive environment to walk around, and that is very much what we are intending in the future. Next slide, please. It's Dubai. It has to be market-centric. It's what drives this place. So next slide, please. So we know the commercial issues in Dubai. We've been here long enough to know what the market wants. So next slide, please. It's all about the size of the plots, the price point, the GFA, the buildability of the plots. There's no point in ramming a lot of GFA on a plot. Well, you can't build it efficiently. As well as just multimodal transport and also a land mix. So there's a good land mix, live, work, play in the same area. Next slide. As well as that, we talked about lead silver. It does reduce energy, water consumption, and so again, that it's the pocket nicely. So that's very much part of what we're planning. Next slide. And then this, as you can see, this is an illustrated plan of District 2020 in about 20 years' time. I think this is the plan. The Dubai Exhibition Centre, which we are driver, has been fully built. And here's a short video just to complete the presentation. There's the event. It's now complete. March 2021. The next day, you strip it back and the buildings come out of the sand. It's incredible. If only it was that easy. So this will take a number of years, but you can see the type and quality of environment that we created. We still have the advantage of some of the main spaces. The dome, which can hold about 10,000 people, will still be in a major event space. It has the projection on the membrane, which is just out of this world, and we'll be able to retain that, as I said, for the future of Expo. Well, that completes my presentation. I hope I didn't go on too long. Handing it back to Benita.
Well, you did absolutely fine, David. Thank you very much for that. Well, I think you made some really important points there in that. I mean, the pavilions haven't been called the way they are in terms of mobility, sustainability, you know, just for the sake of it. I mean, looks like it has actually permeated the entire build structure. I mean, you're trying to make sure that people are mobile, which is, you know, for the ones sitting back in the UK might seem like, yeah, so we all walk, but in the UAE, that's not quite the case. Nobody really walks, to be perfectly honest. So, you know, to ensure that people are on the move and people are walking, and, you know, and to give people that sort of experience, I think clearly a lot of thought has been put through the entire structure of Expo and District 2020 going forward. And also those points about the fact that, there's so much of importance given to the well community certifications and the LEED silver certifications. I think that's a good pointer to a lot of companies who are trying to be a part of this built environment, to ensure that your products and your services sort of flow into that ultimate objective of the buildings being LEED certified.
I would say, just from Expo's point of view, the sustainability is very much part of the DNA of the company. We have a separate department that looks after this, and they're very active in pursuing all things sustainable. It's really quite a pleasure working on this project.
Great, great. So I hope now, the companies who are attending, as well as the ITAs who are attending, sort of impress upon the other companies that they'd be speaking to, that this sort of message, this sort of objective flows through every aspect of that built environment. And with that, I will now invite my next speaker, Michelle, who will be speaking on the influence of UKEF projects, and not just the influence of UKEF projects, but also how to avail UKEF projects. What are some of the prerequisites, and what are some of the bigger projects that are happening in this part of the world? Michelle, she is the International Export Finance Manager who looks after the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Pakistan regions. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Vanita. Thank you, David. Could we have the next slide, please? Next one. Hi, my name is Michelle Leong, and I joined UK Export Finance in June 2019. Together with David, we are responsible for the business origination activities for the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Pakistan region based in the Dubai British Embassy. We are both former bankers, myself from Standard Chartered Bank. My experience includes corporate banking and restructuring, trade and supply chain financing in Southeast Asia before the bank moved me to London, where I held the position of director responsible for onboarding the Europeans and the Americas hedge funds and real money funds portfolio of names. I have been living in the Middle East region for 13 years now, and both David and myself would welcome an opportunity to speak with you should you need our assistance. Next slide, please. A bit about UK Export Finance. UK Export Finance is the oldest ECA in the world. As of this year, 2020, we are 101 years old. We are part of the UK government department, working alongside Department for International Trade, Her Majesty Treasury, and we've worked with over 70 private lenders and credit insurers. Now, although we are the oldest ECA in the world, we continue to win awards for the best ECA by Global Trade Review and Trade Finance Global due to our flexibility and innovation. We provide financing support in more than 60 local currencies. We have supported and helped companies export to over 200 countries. In terms of exports, we cover all sectors such as goods and services from the UK, and also intangibles such as technology contracts. Now, over the last 3 years, UK Export Finance has expanded its overseas network. Aside from both David and I covering the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Pakistan region, we have international representatives based in Colombia, Brazil, and Mexico, covering the Latin Americas, Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa, covering the African continent, China, Indonesia, India, and Turkey. Over the last 1 to 2 years, we will be expanding, over the next 1 to 2 years, sorry, we will be expanding our overseas network to provide more coverage to our clients. UKEF does 3 things. One is helping UK exporters or companies win contracts by offering long-term financing to overseas buyers of UK goods and services. And the second is helping UK exporters fulfill contracts and get paid. The first activity, which is the first half of this table on the slide, is the one that both David and I focus on, and that is providing long-term financing to overseas buyers of UK goods and services by offering exporters, by helping exporters make their offering more competitive. I'll come back to this in my next slide. But the second and the third activity, which is the second half of this slide, whereby we help companies fulfill contracts and get paid. And these activities are undertaken by 24 of our export finance managers based in the UK. Products such as bond insurance policy, export insurance policy, OII, bond support scheme, working capital schemes are all there to help companies ease their cash flow, where UK Export Finance will provide a cover to take 80% of the risks, and the remaining 20% will be taken up by the banks. A new product which was announced by the UK government 2 days ago is the General Export Facility, which we find appropriate to our market here. What we find most of the time, and a lot of inquiries came to both David and myself, is that for smaller deals, it is unlikely the buyers in this region will take financing, mainly because there's a lot of admin work and extensive due diligence undertaken. So usually buyers in these regions, government or semi-government, would have budget allocated to them for smaller transactions. We also find that in these regions, companies face a lot of issues on payment delay. So payment delay in collections rather than non-payment. So late payment will impact the company's cash flow. Cash flow is needed to pay their expenses. And it will also restrict the issuance of performance bonds and advance payment bonds and other working capital requirements where cash deposits are needed. So General Export Facility, we call it GEF, is a good and appropriate fallback arrangement for exporters if they are not paid on time. What GEF does, which is different from the previous facility, is that, previous slide please, is that instead of looking at financing on a contract by contract basis, we are now able to provide GEF based on the average export turnover over the last 3 financial years. Now the cutoff criteria is at least 5% per annum of your annual turnover has been made up of UK exports in each of the last 3 financial years, or 20% in any 1 year of the last 3 financial years. For facility up to £5 million, the designated banks will have the delegated authority to approve deals, where UK Export Finance will provide guarantee up to 80% and the banks will take up the remaining 20%. For facility from 5 million and above, the approval will have to come from UK Export Finance. Next slide. Now, providing long-term financing to overseas buyers of UK goods and services are the activities which David and I focus on in this region. Through our buyer credit, we work alongside the banks to make bankable transactions more commercially viable for the overseas buyers, such as the enhancement of the margin of financing up to 85% of the project value, excluding land costs. Banks typically provide up to 60 to 70% financing. Tenor of repayment ranges from 2 years up to 18 years repayment for renewable projects commencing 6 months after commissioning. So for a typical construction project, which has a construction period of say 2 years, and a repayment will start 6 months upon commissioning, up to 10 years. So door-to-door financing, you're looking at 12.5 years. Most buyers would find this useful given that currently many financial institutions are now finding it very difficult to fund long-term projects. Because of our UK government guarantee issued to the banks, they are likely to reduce the interest charge to the overseas buyers, thereby making the overall financing package very encouraging for overseas buyers to take. Next slide. Now, this is a new initiative, a new facility announced by the UK government, and we have just been allocated a budget by Her Majesty Treasury up to £2 billion to support clean growth projects. So the benefit is that it works the same, but it's just that in this direct lending facility, clean growth, the bank will act as a pass-through. The funding will come from the Treasury Department. So we charge an interest rate. The OECD SIR rates for US dollar lending is 1.55% fixed for the entire tenor of the loan. For euro is 0.31%, for pounds 1.09%. The benefits of UKEF direct lending facility include the exporter is paid as though it has a cash contract, and the buyer or the borrower has time to pay over a number of years and can borrow at a competitive fixed rate of interest. Now, this direct lending clean growth is to support clean growth, and it follows the green bond principles. Next slide, please. So what projects will qualify for our direct lending clean growth facility? Sustainable water, wastewater management, renewable energy, ecosystem, anything that prevents pollutions, that prevents emission of gases, greenhouse gases to the environment, anything that reduces footprint to the environment, green buildings, energy efficiency, all these can qualify for our direct lending. David, you mentioned about automated vehicles, electric vehicles, anything that can take the number of diesel cars off the roads will qualify under our clean transportation. Next slide. To qualify for UKEF, we will look for a minimum UK content of 20%. So I covered the sectors, covered the exports, local currencies, repayment tenor. We have a global banking relationships. We work with all the international banks here. And our guarantee is unconditional. So anyone were to call on our guarantee is payment from the UK government. We are flexible in our transactions, so we will welcome any opportunity that you think you have. You can come and talk to both David and myself. Next slide. Eligibility, we look for a minimum threshold of 20% UK content in a particular projects. All our projects, all our financing will have to qualify for the environmental, social, and human rights. The projects will undergo the due diligence process. The banks must be acceptable to us, especially clean growth direct lending, where the bank will act as a pass-through. So there's a minimum corporate governance or standards that we look for in certain banks that handles our direct lending. Sustainable lending rules will apply. All these criteria, you can access it from our website. Next slide, please. Next one. So over the last 2-3 financial years, we have supported a lot of projects, in particular in the UAE. For example, the BIHA, the construction of the BIHA headquarters. We supported the UK firms, ex-Carillion. The UK content is the architectural piece by the late Zaha Hadid, and also the purchase of artificial intelligence from UK companies Johnson Control. These buildings use a lot of recycled materials. And it is designed to optimize energy efficiency, market the best use of available spaces. Next slide, please. The next one is the Dubai Coca-Cola Arena. This is the iconic projects where UKEF support provide up to $220 million to enable the UK company Kia to win contracts for the design and build of the state-of-the-art 17,000-seater entertainment and sports venue. And this is similar to the London O2 Arena. So in these projects, there are 167 supply chain contracts ranging from management contracting service, mechanical and electrical equipment, rigging and drapery, events, sports lighting, and crowd management systems. All these come from the UK supply chain. Next slide. All the 4 phases of Dubai World Trade Center were financed by UK Export Finance. The 4th phase, which is the last phase, was undertaken by the local contractor ASGC Al Shafa, where we provided financing of up to $180 million. Next one. Now, this is a new project which I believe will reach financial close end of this year. This is an iconic luxurious hotel next to Burj Al Khalifa, where we provided financing of more than £350 million for the construction of the Masa Al Arab Hotel. The UK content achieved is 36%. We also supported local UAE content of slightly under 26%, foreign content 37%. So this is a project which was closed, approved by UK Export Finance in times of COVID, in challenging times as such. Next slide. We also provided financing of more than £500 million to support the construction of 3 hospitals in Oman, Salalah, Suwayk, and Kasab. As you all know, that UK has a well-established supply chain in the healthcare sector. Next one. We provided a direct lending facility to our UK company, Blue Water Bio, to upgrade the wastewater plant in Bahrain in the Tubli area. We provided a direct lending of up to close to £28 million. Now, this direct lending pot was different from the clean growth direct lending pot allocated this year. Previously, we had a pot and we still have £5 billion, and we still have a capacity of £3 billion. But these £3 billion are more for markets where the capital markets are not that developed. So under the new Clean Growth Direct Lending, projects like this will qualify for our Clean Growth Direct Lending Pool. Next slide. I think that concludes my presentation. All I want to say is that the title of the question, Influence of UKEF Projects in Current Economic Environment. What I can say is that David and I has been very busy since the lockdown. Other than, we have done a lot of things in this environment, other than launching the new facility, the General Export Facility, which is more innovative and it helps our UK exporters, especially the smaller projects or smaller contracts. We have also approved deals in this environment, as I mentioned before, the Masal Al Arab. And since COVID, most sponsors we talked to 12 to 18 months ago do not want to take financing. But since then, there has been a willingness to look at financing, alternative financing, especially the ECA such as UK Export Finance. I think in September, we have also increased our market risk appetite in over 100 countries. So in these GCC regions, countries like Saudi Arabia, Dubai, UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, all these have our market risk appetite is in excess of £4 billion each. So we have an ample risk appetite to do business here. So that concludes my presentation. Over to you, Vinita.
Thank you very much for that, Michelle. I mean, looks like clean growth is almost an overarching topic here, you know, across what Michael was talking about in terms of AVs and you know, making sure that it's sustainable. And I think you were also essentially talking about what sort of programs that can be extended by UKEF to companies who are geared towards clean growth. So it's good to see that there's almost a concerted effort there for that push towards clean tech to a large extent. And also, I think what you ran through there about the eligibility of companies, I think that's also important to a lot of exporters, especially in this economic context where companies are looking at other markets, and the fact that there are so many different projects going on across the region. I think it was very important for companies attending today, and like I said, for the ITAs also who are attending today, so that they're able to speak about these ongoing projects. And even in these projects, I see you know, a range of companies that can supply into these kind of projects. There's this civil works, there's architectural work, you know, there's this infrastructure works that they can be involved in. So it's good to see that sort of a range across all of these companies. So what's the next steps, Michelle? In case a company wants to find out more, do they reach out to yourself here in the UAE, or do they reach out to your colleagues back in the UK? What's the process look like?
I think as long as if you are here in this region, come and speak to us, David and myself. We are contactable. At this moment, we still cannot accept external visitors to our embassy, but we are contactable by emails, and we are so used to technology now. So we are contactable, and you can speak to us. We are not driven by targets. So even if it's just a small project, seeking advice on how to structure deals, we would welcome this opportunity to speak to our UK companies.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much for that, Michelle. And on that note, I'll take one or two questions that have come in from Stephen. So Stephen wants to know, to understand that, you know, and this came in just after David had presented. So he said the project looked great, but what about sustainable social housing projects in the UAE? Stephen, if you, I'll have you know that the UAE has a pretty unique demographics in that the push towards sustainable social housing is not as strong as we'd like it to see, simply because 20% of the population comprises 20% of the indigenous population, as they called Emiratis, and 80% of expat population. And all of the Emiratis are essentially on government welfare to a certain extent, and the expats like us, our existence here pretty much solely depends on the jobs that we hold while we're here, and therefore that push towards social housing project is not as much as we'd like it to see, simply because, like I said, of the unique demographics of this country. He has also asked, does a UK company need to register in UAE? And if so, what is the process? Well, to answer that question, Stephen, we'll need a bit more details about what your company does, and what are you a product-based company, or do you provide services? And also it comes down to who your clients are. So I think there's if you speak to your ITA, they will be able to share with you some of our previous workshops where there are these 6 golden, not rules, but probably questions that you need to ask yourself before you set up here in the UAE, which includes what sort of products and services you offer, and most importantly, who are your clients, which will then dictate uh, whether you have to set up here in the UAE depending on their procurement practices. Um, and after this, I will move on now to the next section, because we're coming to the close of this event. We're going to touch upon some of the business do's and don'ts in the region. So very lightly going to touch on some of the cultural nuances that you need to bear in mind now that the travel corridor has been established, and we look forward to welcoming a lot of UK companies in the near future when they do. So next slide, Abby. So very quickly, I just want to run you through the fact that if you're not here, you're not here. What that simply means is, because this is the UAE, your competition is going to be very, very stiff. I mean, the UAE, specifically Dubai, has earned a name for itself all across the world. So, which is exactly why the whole world is here knocking at their doors. So, and that makes your physical presence here all the more important in order to have those sort of face-to-face conversations and meetings. Also, and we touched upon this in one of our previous workshops, where undertaking due diligence is of utmost importance. So invest in good legal advice. We can help you in that. We have a good network of law firms who have a good base and a footprint in the UK and here in the UAE. So they essentially understand the lay of the land across both these geographies, and therefore are well positioned to give you advice on what the next steps should be. Tapping into goodwill is essentially tapping into the network that I was referring to earlier. So Rashid, my colleague there, part of the Department for International Trade based out of the British Embassy, speak to him, speak to us here, the British Centers for Business, speak to the British Business Group, which is again part of this network that I was referring to, and the UAE UK Business Council. Again, another entity that you could tap into. Again, amongst us, we will tend to know, who knows someone who knows the right person to be able to point you in the right direction. On my next point, plan to leave, as pessimistic as it might sound, always have an exit plan in place. And with that in mind, and I want to draw your attention here to one of our incubator options, wherein we don't, when companies set up with us, we don't really lock them in for an entire year. I mean, the exit plan is in place on a quarterly basis, as a matter of fact. So should things go south, you have a neat exit plan in place. So have that in place, because not everything is nice and rosy over here. Wasta is a term that you will hear quite a bit if you were to come out here. Again, loosely referring to the network they were talking about, the goodwill that we were referring to earlier. Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Also, I mean, I published a blog a couple of weeks ago wherein I was talking about how Dubai is not the country. I mean, if only I had a penny for every time I heard about UAE being referred to as Dubai, I think I could have retired by now. But understand that, the United Arab Emirates is comprising of 7 different emirates, and the opportunities are not always centered in Dubai. So do explore other Emirates. I mean, do your research and reach out to us. Again, we are all the resources that we have, all the resources that you could tap into to talk about projects happening in other Emirates. See you on Friday. Again, something I hear all the time. So first rule of doing business in the Middle East: Fridays are our days off. Fridays and Saturdays are our weekends here. So if you are looking to organize meetings, virtual meetings these days, avoid Fridays at all costs. It's almost as blasphemous as saying, we'll speak to you on a Sunday, though that is the first working day for us in the UAE. Free zones might sound are a bit of a misnomer here, aren't really free. So there's over 50 different free zones in this part of the world. Again, do your research. Boils down to those 6 questions that I was referring to earlier. Really comes down to what kind of product or service that you're offering, and most importantly, also the business model that you will adopt while you're here and wanting to do business. And patience, perseverance, and some more patience is everything in this part of the world. So be ready to, wait for as long as it takes. But I can also guarantee you that it has been gold for the ones who have managed to take that deep breath, smile, and stay calm and carry on. So just a few quick do's and don'ts here. Uh, research is everything. Get on the internet, get on Google will give you every possible information that you can hold on. Collate as much as you can and come to us with the questions, and we're always here to answer, because again, Google will give you 15 pages of information. So have all that information ready. Obviously nothing beats on the ground experience. So again, I repeat, have all the information that you need handy, and we will obviously moderate things for you, and we should be able to explain and simplify things for you when you do come to us. When you come out here, again, important to respect local laws and customs, because at the end of the day, it is an Islamic country. As shiny and modern as it may seem, the Emiratis are still conservative to a large extent, and it is absolutely important to respect local customs. And it could be something as simple as when somebody offers you a cup of coffee or dates, just don't say no. I mean, even if you're taking 2 sips, that's fine. But do accept that hospitality that's been extended to you. WhatsApp, I think this is something I did raise yesterday, but do bear in mind that it is an absolute accepted means of communication in this part of the business communication in this part of the world. So I'm not entirely sure how much of a response you'll get from emails, but if you are to reach out through WhatsApp, you're more likely to be guaranteed to get a response on that. So go out there, attend all of the events that you will have access to. Again, be it trade shows, walk the shows if you need be. Almost always across all of these major and prominent trade shows, the Department for International Trade will almost always have events happening in conjunction with these trade shows. So make sure that you're aware and you participate in these events and make as many connections as you can. As far as don'ts are concerned, there's zero tolerance towards drinking and driving. And also using substances. So that's a big no-no in this part of the world. And yeah, I mean, interesting point they made regarding meetings and negotiations to go as planned. And I was talking about this to a company the other day, wherein I told them that when you go in for meetings, do not expect to be as structured as it is back in the UK, because you would be talking about the weather and cricket and football for the first 50 minutes, and then probably talk about business in the last 10 minutes. So just be prepared to talk about everything except business perhaps for the first couple of meetings, really, sometimes, until that relationship and rapport is established. And yeah, um, just it is the UAE at the end of the day. Across the seven Emirates that I was referring to, we have some amazing, adventure sports, all the way through to some great retail therapy that'll spoil you rotten. So don't forget to, avail everything that the UAE has to offer. And with that, Rashid, I will hand over to you if you want to add a few things in there.
Well, thank you, Vinita. I think that you've covered it quite comprehensively, and but I just wanted to bring to the audience two particular things that have happened recently. One is the signing of the Abraham Accord, where UAE, along with Bahrain, have established diplomatic relations with Israel. And this week in Dubai is the GITEX week, which is the AI and technology exhibition. And of all the shows that were planned for this year, this has been the first show where Dubai have taken the bold step of having this exhibition in person. And one of the largest delegations that visited for the first time not only this exhibition, but stepped foot in the country was from Israel. And I happened to sit in the Digital Economic Summit, as it was named, between UAE and Israel, and they were talking about exactly the same things. And a key member of the Israeli delegation pointed out in a panel discussion that please do not be offended because in their nature, they tend to get a bit impatient and try to jump towards business discussions straight away, which is quite the contrary to UAE traditional approach to business. They would like to get to know you first, and once that trust is established, then things will flow from there. So that's a massive step forward, and in terms of the modernity and the forward-looking approach of the UAE leaders, and I think that nothing could have been more telling than what has happened by establishing the diplomatic relations with Israel. So, and the second recent development has been around the softening of personal laws, company law, and around relaxation of rules around consumption of alcohol. What Benita was talking about, drink driving and zero tolerance around it, that is absolutely fundamental, and it's still pretty much applicable. However, previously there used to be a requirement for special alcohol licenses to be bought by presumably non-Muslim visitors and residents here. That has been taken. That requirement has been taken away, and on family matters, there've been previously again there was the opposite sexes live-in relationship of opposite sexes were frowned upon, but cohabitation has been allowed. And any personal will matters of expats would be decided on the basis of what applies in their home countries. So that's a massive step forward. What used to be previously, and same is the case for company laws. I mean, Vinita touched upon the free zone offer that the 50 plus free zones in the UAE offer to foreign companies wishing to set up here without a local sponsor. The free zones would have been the natural choice, or perhaps the only choice previously. But with the recent announcement announcement, they've allowed foreign companies to set up, onshore, outside the free zone area, mainland UAE, without a sponsor. So, we're still waiting for the final details to emerge, and I believe the devil would be in the final details. However, again, this has been an area that has been previously, discussed quite extensively, and many international advisors have argued for this requirement to be taken away to make it more business friendly and open for competition. And finally, it has happened. So I think, again, I would say Dubai has lived to its, the UAE, again, we're quite used to talking about Dubai itself, but the UAE has lived to its reputation, really, and has been, again, the first to embark on this journey, and setting the example for others in the region. So I would say this is probably just the beginning. So watch the space. So I think with these positive developments that I've just mentioned, I think it should, even lower the risks that you may have in your mind while looking at the UAE. And I would strongly suggest that UAE has even attained a higher ranking in terms of being a springboard into the wider region. Yeah, I mean, delighted to be of any help that both Vinita, myself, and indeed some of my colleagues who are attending this webinar from their as international trade advisors from various regions of the UK. Please do contact us, and we'll be very happy to lead you into UKEF supported projects or any other contacts, maybe looking for distributors, agents, or indeed trying to set up in the market. So yeah, I mean, please do contact us. Thank you.
Right. Thanks so much, Rashid. Yes, some very important developments that had taken place over the last few months with the Israelis now quite interested in tapping into the UAE market, especially around clean tech. Again, as a matter of fact, so there's a lot of action happening around that area. So I think with that, we have very quickly come to the end of the time slot that was allotted to us. I want to extend a very big thank you to all the speakers who were here with us today. David, Michelle, and Rashid, thank you very much for joining us and sharing, David, for the updates on the Expo site and the Legacy Plan District 2020, and Michelle, for for an overview of the projects that's being supported by UKEF across the region. And Rashid, always for your unfailing support for all the events that the BCB runs and organizes for the Department for International Trade. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and you shall be receiving the recording of this event, and also you will be getting a link for a feedback survey. So please do take in 2 minutes of your time, fill that out and submit it. Thank you very much.